Hello, hello, hello. Starting again. Hello, everybody. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Happy Monday. Welcome to another great episode of the Sweet Lou Special. And I think we got the things worked out here. So, hey, thank you for your patience. Let's dive right in to the episode and of what's going on here currently in America, in the world, everywhere. Happy Monday. All right, so recently, a trans woman by the name of Mary Gregory, who is biologically a male and identifies as a woman, had competed in a women's powerlifting competition recently. And I believe it took place in Georgia. Mary had broken quite a few records in her competition and was quoted as saying that he went 9 for 9 and is super proud of her accomplishments. He or her. I know that this is going to be a sensitive topic for some people because, now we're in the age of the 21st century where we have to be cautious of using correct pronouns of all damn things instead of calling it how it is, because people get offended if they identify as a he and you call him a she or it's ma'am. But that's where we're at today. Folks, a biological man had broken these records in a women's powerlifting competition. No surprise that this professional or semi-professional, or however they view themselves, as any kind of competition would allow this to happen. But hey, we have to be compassionate. We have to understand others and be able to give them the things, everything that they want, and try to cater to all their wants and needs. Biological female athletes, now I have to specify on this, and since it's 2019, biological female athletes have came out to say that this is an unfair situation, an unfair competition for biological women that are trying to compete, and that Mary is in a male body, so of course, she will outperform biological females. Now, to go on with how I feel about this entire situation, now let me start off by saying this, okay, because I want to make this part kind of clear for everyone. I believe that people in America have the right to be whoever they want to be, as long as it's within the confines of the law and that it's not hurting or harming or violating any other person's rights and liberties. They can identify as whatever the hell they want. Nathan Warhog, male, female, cat, dog, child. I mean, there's some weird shit out there that people want to be identifying as. Morally, I think the entire thing is wrong when it comes down to my core basic values of what I was brought up to believe and what I feel like personally, morally. But I don't want this to conflict with what I believe politically or what I feel that is the rights of human beings. Okay? And especially Americans. But regardless, you have the freedom of choice here in the United States. You do. You have the freedom of choice as a human being. Now, I agree that this entire thing is unfair to the fullest to have a biological male compete against women in any kind of athletic competition. Completely unfair. I don't think that it's right, but we have to cater to the wants of what the people want. We have to we have to live in the fear because we don't want to be called transphobic, which I'm not transphobic by any means. I don't give a shit on what you identify as, what you want to practice and live your life as long as it's not harming others, as long as it's not violating anyone else's liberties. You can do whatever the hell you want as long as it's within the confines of law. I don't give a shit. I don't. But do you think that it is correct for these kind of people to be forcing others to call them by the correct pronouns? Because if you don't call them by the correct pronoun, that is highly offensive. I think we've kind of crossed the line into it becoming too far when it comes to this pronouns. I mean, states like California have come up with laws that in the healthcare system, that if a healthcare professional continuously calls a patient by the wrong pronoun, that they could be charged under the state code, under the law, could be prosecuted, which I think is completely fucking ridiculous. Me, I just don't take shit that seriously. Like, if you're going to call me he, she, whatever, I don't even give a fuck what name you call me. Here we go. Sorry for the interruption there. All right, but again, as I was going on my rant, I've been called many things in my life. All right, I say you could just call me by any name, just don't call me late for dinner. But hey, some people take their name. It's a lot of pride. With a lot of pride, they take their family name with a lot of pride. I can understand that, and I can respect it. I just didn't think that pronouns are going to be such a big thing and a big topic of disagreement or agreement, whatever it is. But to continue on, all right, now there are plenty of stories out there of what that involves people that are transgender, that identify as the opposite sex, that are competing in different kind of, in women's categories, basically, of organized sports. Biggest one that come out not too long ago, probably about a year or so ago, that you may or may not know about is of a teenager in Texas who has won multiple state wrestling championships. I think everyone gets on this misconception about that story, if you know about it, if you're familiar about it, is that, I think people think that this is a man or a biological male transitioning to female that is competing, which is not the case. It is a female who is transitioning to male, but he takes testosterone, takes hormone treatment, and is going through an active medical treatment process of transitioning into the opposite sex, which is trying to be a male. So, if you ever see pictures of this person, looks very masculine, looks like a male, and that's the entire point of what he's trying to do. Obviously, that's his life choice, whatever, 18, 19 years old now. But it completely demolished the women's wrestling women's wrestling championships for high schoolers for in this category. Now, he takes testosterone. He's taking actual medical procedures to change his body to become more masculine, to become more male, which gives him an unfair advantage over the females that he's competing against in the wrestling championship, in the sport of wrestling, which he has won twice, went undefeated one year. Couple students had even forfeited against him because fear of being injured. But you see, these are the unfair advantages. And so, where do we find ourselves when it comes to competition, for the love of sports, for the part of the academia, where we should be part of an organized sport of some sort, and, so that we can better shape our minds, our bodies, and, understand what it's like to be competitive, to be compassionate towards others, to know what it's like to win, to know what it's like to lose. But, when you have someone like that is having a clear-cut edge of taking advantage of the situation. Now, granted, this teenager wanted to compete in the males category, okay, but the state of Texas refused because on his birth certificate, he is born a female. So, by the state law, if you're going to compete in the category of the sex that you're wanting to compete, it has to be the one that's on your birth certificate, right? Kind of strange, But, like, he obviously has some form of unfair advantage over biological women because he is going through the transition of, I think I saw something about steroids on there. I don't know for sure. But what we do know is that he was taking testosterone. That's for sure, right? So obviously there's a chemical advantage that he is taking over his competitors, which are women who are not wanting to transition to become men. Now, to carry on about this entire thing when it comes to schools and competition and sports of men and women, is that there are school boards in the country that are considering that they should force schools to allow students to be able to compete in the gender category that they identify as in the sport that they wish to compete in. Basically, meaning that if I was in high school now and I identify as a woman or I identify as female, but I'm biologically a male, then in order to feel fit in, I can change in female locker rooms. I can go and compete in female sports and activities like that, and competitions like that are for biological women. Just based on because I identify as a woman. You know, that's what it means. And I think that is completely and utterly unfair. It's unfair. And this kind of craziness is spreading like wildfire. And I feel that it destroys the integrity of what student sports and competition is all about. Now, you could agree with me, you could disagree with me, but I don't find it morally right, nor do I find it ethically correct either. Because again, I'll go back. I don't give a shit if you're gay, bi, straight, whatever. I don't give a shit if you're transgender. I don't care if you're born a man and you want to identify as female and vice versa, whatever. That is your decision, right? But you must understand that if you take these steps and you want to become that, and you want to go down, that you will have limitations, right? And one of these is the limitations of fair competition, of sports events, of athletics. This is what I think that one of the limitations of. Just because I choose to do A, sometimes by choosing A, I at the sacrifice of B. You know what I mean? Like, just because I want to make this life choice and I want to have this lifestyle, it doesn't mean that all the doors and I could be able to do anything and everything. Sometimes you are restricted by the choices that you make in life. Felons are a great example. But I just don't think, because and this is what it comes down to, is that we have stepped forward for many, many years here in the United States to fight for women's rights, to give women a fair advantage, a fair chance at everything in the United States. Past 100 years, women have gotten the right to vote in the United States. Awesome. Just recently, in the past few years, we've just opened up combat roles for women in the armed forces. Great. That's what they wanted. That's what we wanted. Let's just say, I won't say they, because, we collectively as America agree. And I feel like when we've taken all these steps to fight for the rights of women in the United States and rights of women around the world, that all this is doing is that it's sending a message. And it's sending a message that men, again, are coming in to take away what women have fought for. They're taking away the right to compete fairly. They're showing the world that, again, men can do this better than women. Because it may not be a big-ass billboard that says that, nor is it a big Twitter post. But however, the message that we're sending by allowing this, that's what we're sending. That's what we're telling our future generations. That, again, oh, hey, Woman of the Year is a biological man. Again, that's saying that, again, men are just doing it. Men are getting it. Which shouldn't be the case. We should be empowering each other. We should have fair and equal treatment of each other. Men, women, black, white, everything. All as Americans should have this fair treatment. And so what do we do? What do we do to solve this kind of issue? Now, I feel like, so one woman had a professional athlete in the weightlifting, or I don't have her name. However, she brought up the idea of creating categories for transgender people, which that's something that I would think that is a plausible idea to solve this issue. A transgender category for that. Which is going to be crazy because then, international wise is, it's going to be weird. But like, I just don't see that it's right. Because hey, let's get the fact. Let's get facts in. Let's get science involved. Let's talk about that for a little bit. All right. The fact of the matter is this. Agree, disagree, but I'm telling you this fact. Men and women are built physiologically different from each other. This is fact. We don't have some of the same organs. A uterus for women, testicles for men, sexual traits, sex organs. This is what defines and separates men and women biologically. And when it comes down to chemically, developmentally, physiologically, men create testosterone, which improves muscle mass, increases muscle mass, causes, all different kinds of behavioral changes like aggressiveness, the willingness to compete, the drive to win, to conquer and destroy, whatever you want to call it. But these are the differences between men and women, right? Women have wider hips, they have uterus, they grow breasts for childbearing. Men are just great, built with bigger muscles, typically are taller, heavier than women in mass. So to have this trans woman come in, who has the physiological traits of a man because she is a man biologically, of course going to outcompete, outperform, And then it just goes to show you that if a woman is trying to take the appropriate ethical steps of properly training for an event like this, for some kind of sport event, like powerlifting, without having to take testosterone or try to transition to a man or having an unfair advantage over her competitors, that is going to be smacked down by a biological man. Now, this is why, and all of these have been facts of science of how men and women are built differently since the dawn of mankind. Now, it is why we also have different sex groups for organized sports. One is for the safety of the athlete, because in football, you don't want a female quarterback or a female running back get hit by a full-size male linebacker, right? Because chances are that woman is going to be injured and cause life-death situations. It's serious, and that's why we do it. And another is because of fair competition. You're not going to have Michael Jordan in the WNBA dominate. That would happen. I'm not saying that, because look, we've taken female sports here in the United States to great lengths. And granted that in professional sports for women, like the WNBA, female soccer, as such as softball, may not be taken that seriously here in the United States. But however, female athletes have increased in numbers, and and it's been a phenomenal thing. It's great that we're encouraging women to compete in sports. I mean, if you didn't know, the Women's World Cup, America won that. And when it comes to like world sports, that the female and female sports in the world, America dominates. America dominates in female sports in the world, because we are the ones that take it more seriously than other countries. We've beaten Canada in hockey. We've beaten Canada. United States team, female hockey team, won the gold against the country that is renowned. Its national sport is hockey. And that's great. The American soccer team in the Women's World Cup a few years ago won it. The men's America team can't even compete in the last World Cup. But yet the women for the United States had dominated the Women's World Cup. Great. And that's what we should be encouraging. I believe, what country was it? Was it Iran that got caught using men in their female soccer team, their national soccer team? They got caught like using 3 or 4. Let me pull that up because that's let's see here. 8 of Iran's here's the art. This is the first one. 8 of Iran's women's football team are men. And this was written 30th September 2015. So this was the year after the men. So Iran's Football Association accused of being unethical after it is claimed 8 players in the women's national team are men awaiting sex change operations. Yeah, for one thing, that wouldn't happen in Iran. Fuck no. They just did that to try to sneak in a competitive edge. Now it says 8 of Iran's women's football team are actually men awaiting sex change operations. It has been claimed the country's football association was accused of being unethical for knowingly fielding 8 men in its women's team. Yeah. Because, they wanted to win. In 2014, the country's football governing body introduced random checks after it was revealed that 4 national team players were either men who had not completed sex change operations or were suffering from sexual development disorders. Anyway, again, women's sports in the United States, we dominate the world when it comes to women's sports. We don't dominate the world in certain sports, and when it comes to men categories, i.e. specifically soccer or football, whatever you prefer to refer it to. But, we have made great strides, and that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that we don't want to compromise the integrity of women's sports here in the United States. We don't. I don't want it for if I have a daughter to have to go and compete against a biological man. I wouldn't think it's fair, nor would I think it is right, morally, ethically. But I understand that if you're a trans person, you shouldn't be limited as well and not wanting to be involved in some kind of sports. I got that. Now, competition-wise, I don't know. Because that part I would agree. But I just think that a good resolution for this is to create transgender categories for sports, for these kind of competitions, so that there's not an unfair and unethical advantage by any means over any other competitor. Because that's what it comes down to, So I feel as if we made steps back in the fight for women's equality. And I agree with some of the women that have come out to say that it is unfair and that they think that changes should be done, right? Now, then we get to the situation of the wrestler who's transitioning to a male, and is taking hormone therapy to have an unfair advantage over women. Now, more and more each year, we get the subject of transgender people, and it becomes more and more complicated as we try to accept people for who they are. Here in our, if you want to call it the millennial generation, we've always been raised to treat people fairly. People come from different walks of life, so on and so forth. And it just seems that instead of it becoming like a legitimate issue or a legitimate thing about being transgender, that it's becoming more of a fad. And that It's just becoming, because we're always seeing it, and that, people want to be different, so they, there are people that transition to the opposite sex, and then they don't, or are transitioning and they want to go back, or they don't like it. It just becomes a fad because we're seeing it all the time. We're hearing about it. It gets into our minds. We're thinking about it constantly. And so, like when we try to be progressive and get, things change, and we try to move forward, society, sometimes likes to throw in the monkey wrench on what we would think normal is. Now, we shouldn't glorify that a biological man is taking away weightlifting records from biological women. To me, in my opinion, it is counterproductive to what many women of the past and what many women are continuing to fight for today. Now, my prediction is that schools are going to see a big backlash from communities once they force schools to allow people to compete in the sex category that they identify with. And, it is a difficult subject, because what do you guys think? Do you think that if you make the life choice of wanting to transition to the opposite sex, and you want to be in sports and you want to compete, what do you think should be the limitations of that person? Should that person be limited to not playing sports or being able to compete? And if so, or if not, then, what should we do to kind of mitigate an unfair advantage over other competitors based off of their sex, based off of, their physiological build? And should they have their own category? Should there be a transgender category of basketball? Should there be transgender category of any kind of like Olympic sports events? So that's something that America is going to have to transition to and change and try to influence the world about. And, do you think that is right in this whole entire situation? So I would like to get your guys' opinion. Should we allow a female that is transitioning to male to continue to compete against women when they're taking testosterone or other treatments to be a man? I mean, where are we going to draw the line of unfair competition in sports? Where are we going to draw the line where we want to continue to empower the women of the United States? Because female sports here, like I said before, in the United States have taken big strides forward. We have competed against the world in women's sports, and we dominate as the United States when it comes to women's sports. That's the truth. That's my opinion. So granted that it's not being televised and it's not as popular as men's sports. And I don't know what it's going to take for any kind of women's category of sports to become more popular or equally popular as men's, but that's just the truth. That's reality. And I would love to see women's sports like the WNBA, women's hockey, women's soccer become just more popular. We're making strides of where I think there was a female that just got a full ride scholarship at a university or a college and plays on the football team that is a kicker for the team, which is an appropriate position, I would think. I wouldn't think that a female center would be well in integrating a multiple sex team. What do they call it? A co-ed. Yeah. But anyways, again, hey, leave your comments. Get part of the conversation. I would like to hear you guys' point of view on the entire subject, because this was something that I wanted to bring up and kind of talk about, and because it was something that was kind of popped up on my Facebook page, and people really tuned in onto the conversation, really gave their idea about it, because we're seeing throughout the country of biological men competing in women's events, or like I said, with the teenager in Texas. So, because changes are coming. We're always that this, gear of the United States is always continuing to move, and we're trying our best to move forward, but sometimes weird shit just pops up, and this is one of them. This is going to be like, oh man, how are we going to tackle this? Because hey, we have to be able to please everyone. We have to be able to call everyone by the right pronouns, the right names, and so on and so forth. Which I get it, man. And I understand. I can sympathize, because everyone wants to be different. We don't want to be, black and white, or we want to. But hey, that's the weirdness of America, man. So give me your thoughts, opinions, and we're going to move on. So more conflict has been happening in the country of Israel between Hamas and Israel, of course. Now, over the weekend, Palestinian militants had fired over 600 rockets into southern Israel, with roughly 240 of those rockets that had been fired had been intercepted in midair by missile defense systems in Israel. 240. From the number that I read, was 690 rockets just over the weekend. And so obviously from the Gaza Strip into southern Israel. And this is which, if you think 240 out of 690, that means that's not even 50% were intercepted, so less than that, which means the majority of those rockets were successful impacts. Now, it was reported that 4 Israeli civilians were killed in the attack over the weekend. And Palestinians have claimed civilian casualties as well, with the blame on the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, IDF have claimed that they were not responsible for the bombings that had killed the Palestinian civilians, but rather that their deaths were the result of Palestinian neglect on the rockets that were being fired, and that it was the terrorist organizations of like Hamas and what is the Islamic Jihad is the other one, and so that the latter is hard for me to believe, saying that it wasn't the Israelis' fault. I don't know, and that's not going to be a subject that I'm going to tackle right now, because if I was the IDF, of course I would say that it wasn't us, but I don't know the truth about it, nor am I, because that when it comes to the topic of Palestinians and Israelis, it is a very sensitive subject for a lot of Americans, a lot of Muslim Americans, a lot of Jewish Americans. So, however, a ceasefire was called into effect this morning, which would have been like hours and hours ago because of the time difference there, but so that they could stop the attacks going on in Gaza and in southern Israel. Now, we've heard in the news many times, ceasefire in Israel, and it's always going to be like that. Someone gets pissed off, they're going to be lopping off rockets in the midair at the other one inside their own country, and I feel as if this is almost being purposely silenced in American media, because it is, again, another religious conflict that is going on in the Middle East and in Israel. And so the attacks, reportedly came about due to the Hamas's disagreement with Israel's policies on some of their policies. I don't know specifically which ones at this point, but it's easily, you can look it up. That these policies were supposed to be made at the stem of the last ceasefire that was made years ago. And unfortunately, it's just more religious turmoil that is going on in the world. My opinion about it is that I feel that Democratic news sources are probably reluctant to cover the current conflict going on in Israel, mainly because of the tremendous amount of backlash that the Democrats have received since progressive liberals such as Representative Omar and Representative Ocasio-Cortez have taken office and have been criticized for the anti-Semitic comments, specifically from Representative Omar. So I really wouldn't be completely surprised about why they're silencing it, why you're not really seeing so much of it in the American news. I've been following it on the update since Friday, because that's, Saturdays when like the peak of the attacks had occurred. But Hamas and Islamic Jihad, have been considered terrorist organizations for quite some time now, and it is debatable. That subject is debatable depending on who you talk to. Of course, Jewish Americans and Jewish people are going to say, of course, it's a terrorist organization. But officially, under what the United States recognizes them and the rest of the world, they are a terrorist organization. And so Israelis and Palestinians have been fighting for years about, the running of the country of Israel. Is Israel legitimate? Of course, Israel's legitimate. And it's just, it's always back and forth, always back and forth. The citizens have to live in somewhat of, like, in fear a lot of the times because they don't know when the next attack is going to happen. In the Gaza Strip, it is a hot area, man, hot area. I've been in the West Bank personally, which borders on to Jerusalem. And I've also been on the border of Jordan, there in Israel. And people carry firearms openly in public. The military, the IDF, they're allowed to take their rifles home. Israeli citizens are allowed to open carry or conceal carry or open carry firearms. There's many Jewish Americans that hold, dual citizenship. So I think you have to be a citizen of Israel in order to legally openly carry. But Israel is a very pro-gun country for obvious reasons, because they're constantly, or can be constantly, under attack by opposing forces, Palestinians, extremist groups, whatever you want to call them, left, right, black, white, red, blue. But either way, regardless, what happens is that attacks happen, just like attacks that happen over the weekend. But what we know as facts thus far is that instead of debating or protesting Israeli policies or something that the other side disagrees with, instead of coming and sitting at the table, break bread, and, either debate about it, talk about it, yell, scream, or whatever you want to call it, Hamas just immediately resorted by firing 690 rockets over the weekend alone, to make themselves be heard. Kind of, like I said, an extreme way to get a point across, in a very extreme way. That, that's not going to bring any kind of diplomacy into the issue or kind of solve the issue in any positive way. But hey, instead, let's go and fucking just lop off rockets like it's no one's business. Millions of dollars of fucking ordnance right into the air. But hey, this is not a message of peace. But what it is, it's a provocation of war and further conflict. Which brings me to solidify my idea of why it's being silenced in the first place. Because, it shows Muslims in a negative light, again. And I feel that it is important, for people to do their research on the years and years conflicts that have been between Palestinians and Israelis. So that you guys can get a clear idea of why things continue to escalate in Israel. Like I said, I've been to Israel, and and it's to me, it's just so amazing that just for years, hundreds of years, thousands of years, this land has been fought for by all different kinds of people, religious groups, Arabs, Christians, back and forth, Jews and stuff like that, and it's. It's just land in the desert, that our Lord and Savior had been born on and was crucified on. And this is the land that Moses had found after his 40-year journey into the desert, after leaving Israel and bringing the Jews, or freeing the Jews from slavery. But, just... so much blood has been shed on that land, so much, and it's just continuing. But mostly because it's just a religious motivation of like who it really belongs to. Almost, I feel like, and I'll get on my little religious soapbox here, but I don't think that this is what God intended about the Holy Land for it to be. I mean, there's so much death upon that land. There's very few times of peace. And to me, it's sad, because my belief and how I view it is that land is literally for everyone. Everyone has some kind of background, origin to that country, to Jerusalem in some way. Christians, Jews, Muslims. No one just wants to share. It's just fucking big adults, big kids say, no, this is mine. No, this is mine. We've been doing it for thousands of years. And, I mean, it's just sad in a way. I mean, I believe that it should be for everyone. Everyone should be able to feel safe there. Everyone should be able to take a piece of it, or, you know, and so, you know, and that's where we're at. But more death and more religious hate that continues on, you know, and especially in a time where Muslim Americans are trying to make a name for themselves and try to separate themselves away from the extremist Muslims and the extremist bullshit that keeps happening in the world, where they're trying to say we are a people of peace, and then you have things like this that brings them the step back. You know, the good people a step back. So, you know, if you haven't been aware of what's going on in Israel currently, that's what happened over the weekend. Like I said, 4 civilians had died, Israeli civilians, and other Palestinian casualties. And reportedly, the death toll was at 27. And I think that 27, I don't know if it, from what I read, that includes civilians, but I'm pretty sure that's military, so non-civilians. But that's what I read. Last death casualty rate as of this morning, or as of today, was at 27. So that's going to basically sum it up for the episode. All right, sorry I've kind of been neglecting it over last week, but I want to thank you guys, the viewers, the followers, everyone out there for coming in to watch again. I'm back at it. I'm back here to get some more episodes in and give you guys the updates on all the current events that's going on in the country and the world, my opinions on them, because, hey, this is my conservative podcast. I really enjoy doing it. I really want to get the people involved. You guys really motivate me to get new material in, to keep this going, because, hey, we're getting great interactions on the Facebook page. We're getting more and more people every day, which is awesome. If you are stumbling upon this video and you haven't followed my Facebook page yet, the Sweet Lou special, you'll see my ugly mug on there, and you'll know it's me. Let's go ahead and follow. Hey, we post memes. We give our opinions and stuff. Great community so far, and we're always continuing to move forward and build up on it, trying to get more people involved, get more people to follow. This is looking great. But hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So, and one thing is I want to give a special shout out to my great friends over at US Patriot Signs. You can find their information here in the descriptions of the video here. But the owner hooked me up with a great sign for my show. I haven't got to put it up yet. I will probably today, hopefully. You know, look at it. I mean, awesome work, man. And veteran owned. Great business. Great people. And, you know, feel free to find them on their Facebook page. Contact them directly. They do custom signs, memorials, you know, anything, metal, wood. Go ahead and talk to them and give you the options of what, and help you out on coming up with a design for anything you guys want. Plaque for the office, for the living room, for the hallway, whatever it is. But hey, and I'll be posting this up on my YouTube channel. Go ahead and follow me on the YouTube channel. All that stuff's on the description. Thank you guys for coming out, for watching me. Great start to the week. Let's stay motivated, because Friday is coming closer, hopefully. But hey, stay positive. Have a good day, and God bless.